I finished the test. Every injector read exactly the same. And I got to be honest, I actually really thought that that was going to be what the problem was, but the evidence is overwhelming. If you do the test properly, then you can't go with your emotions. You got to go with the evidence. This is not a fuel injector balance issue. It's also not going to be an IAC issue. I guess I'm halfway tempted to take out the IAC and clean it or whatever, but it's not that. So what I think, we may do that, but I'm more inclined to think that we're missing something. And one of the things in science is we've always got what we call reproducibility, and we do this through N, or the number of trials. And I'm kind of thinking back now, when I showed the very first data, when I took the car out for the test drive, again, you saw the intermittence of the problem, which is the whole reason this is such an issue. The problem was you saw there were about 10 stop and then rolling off the line cycles, and only one time out of those 10 cycles did I catch that hiccup. Did that hiccup happen? And of course I did happen to catch it. But the thing is, that's only one time. And what I think I want to do before I start tearing stuff apart and getting all dirty and everything, I think what I want to do is try to see if I can catch a few more of those hiccups, and then see if I can kind of put them together and see if we see a pattern in any of the PIDs or anything like that that shows that there's some consistency every time the hiccup happens. And maybe that'll help us to pinpoint whether it's worth taking stuff apart or redoing any tests, because right now we're just going off the data we saw from one of those hiccups. So I'm going to go ahead and take the car out again and see if I can get 2 or 3 times that I can get these hiccups. I mean, it may be days before that happens, but let me go see what I can do and then put together a panel of all the hiccups together and look for a consistency. That's the plan. I'll be back. After 2 days of driving around, and I had to drive around my neighborhood because remember, I have to keep coming to a lot of stops and then starting again, so this isn't something I can test on the highways and all that, and school started today, so it had to be a little careful with all the kids running around, driving around, starting and stopping under heavy throttle, because you got to be careful, because if you hit one of those kids, at this age, their bones are hard enough that they could damage the car. So I just wanted to be very careful. But I'm going to take off that IAC because I think I know what's wrong with my car. I was able to get, very fortunate for me, a couple of instances back to back where this hiccup occurred, and I was able to capture it on the scan tool. And let's take a look at this. So this is a exploded screenshot out of miles and miles and miles of this chart data, but we got a couple of regions of interest here. So real quick, what we've got, the top graph here, the red line is of course my vehicle speed. I'm at a stop here and then I'm accelerating, and then the green line here is my throttle position sensor. And we can see on the bottom graph with the short-term fuel trims, here is one of those hiccups that happened. And you can see we also had another hiccup happen here, again, after the vehicle is stopped and I'm hitting the accelerator and moving up. But what I noticed is you'll see this purple line. And what I can do with this purple line on the actual scan tool program is I can get any parameter data specific at a time point on that line. So what I'm doing is getting at the very start of this hiccup right here. And one of the things that I observed is the vehicle speed at that point, 16 miles an hour. And then if I go over to my tool again and I move this line to this incidence over here, the hiccup starts again exactly 16 miles an hour. And that actually has me convinced that I think I know what is wrong with this car. And the reason that I think I know what is wrong with the car is because I have an n equals 3, and I think we've got some statistical significance here, because remember, I also have the hiccup that I caught at the very beginning of this video, and guess what speed I found that the hiccup happened at? Again, 16 miles an hour. So actually I think it's going to be more 15 miles an hour, because that fits with my theory. But up until now, I have been going on the idea that this was a load phenomenon, that this is something happening in first gear when the engine's under higher load, when I'm taking off the line. Or maybe it was possibly even a first gear phenomenon. I did try seeing if I could get the hiccup to happen starting off in second gear, but wasn't really able to consistently, I wasn't able to get it at all actually, but I don't think it would have mattered. The point is, I think we've got a speed phenomenon. In other words, the incidence is happening intermittently, but only at a certain speed, not a certain engine load or anything like that. So what we need to do is think of a sensor or switch that is only going to be affected at or below, or maybe at or above, but my theory is at or below, 15 miles per hour. And that is what I'm going with here. So what is a switch or sensor where there is a magic number that it has to do something special at 15 miles an hour? And it turns out that there is one. It will be, I believe, the clutch input switch. Remember, I have a manual transmission. So what a clutch input switch is there is a switch. Actually, on this model, there's 2 switches, but only one of them is important for this symptom here. And this clutch input switch, basically, the job is to detect when you've pushed the clutch pedal. The engine likes to know, well, the computer likes to know that you've pushed in the clutch pedal, because this is going to affect the load of the engine when you're pressing the gas pedal. It likes to know whether the clutch is engaged or not, and that is the purpose of this switch. The switch is normally closed. When you push the clutch pedal in, the switch opens, and the computer then knows that the clutch is not engaged with the engine. And this, of course, helps the engine to anticipate, helps the computer to anticipate the load on the engine. Now, if the switch is intermittently not working, this explains every symptom and everything that we've seen. And the reason it fits all of these symptoms is because if that switch is not working properly and it is, say, stuck open, or it's not aligned with the pedal so that when the pedal comes back, the switch, in other words, the clutch is engaged, the switch still reads open because it's not adjusted with the pedal right, then the computer is going to think that you've got your foot on the clutch when you do not. Why is 15 miles an hour important? Well, here's why. How does the computer know that the switch is not working so that it could throw a code or something like that if there was a problem with the switch? Well, the way it knows that is when the vehicle is moving and the vehicle gets over 15 miles an hour, but it does not detect a movement from that switch, then it knows that there was some kind of problem, and it is going to jump to assuming that the clutch must be engaged, because otherwise, if the switch is open, in other words, your foot is pushed down on the clutch pedal, how did the car get up to 15 miles an hour? So it is a magical number at 15 miles an hour that the computer looks for this. And one of the other things is, why did I not get a check engine light? Well, one of the things is the parameters for setting a check engine light are a lot looser on this clutch input switch. Normally on check engine light things, unless they're very serious, you have to have 2 consecutive drive cycles where you have a failure of the component. On a clutch input switch, it is not like that. You have to have, I don't remember what it is, but it's something like 7 consecutive failures, or maybe it's 2 consecutive failures for longer than 7 seconds or something. So if my intermittence with the problem is not enough to cause those lax criteria to be met, then that explains why I've had this problem for such a long time and never a check engine light. So everything is explained by this clutch input switch thing. So one of the things is the location of this switch really sucks, especially for somebody like me and in a car like that. So what I've got, and I'm kicking myself for not doing this sooner, what I'm going to do is hook up the scan tool to detect the clutch input switch, and we're just going to manually hit the clutch pedal and see if we get a miss on the reading of the clutch input switch to indicate that this might be the problem. And I guarantee, had I thought about it and used a clutch input switch PID on my scan tool, I think whenever we saw this failure here, this symptom, I think we would have also seen that the clutch input switch was not working at that time. So let's go ahead and hook up the scan tool and see if we can reproduce a clutch input switch issue. All right, now obviously I am not going to be able to show the movement of the clutch pedal and the PID at the same time, but if you look in the top corner there, you've got the clutch switch. I'm going to push in the clutch, and we see that the switch now is, well, the switch should be open. So the one, it's a binary thing. It's going to either be 1 or 0. I'm going to go ahead and let the clutch pedal back, and we see it turns back. So I can move the clutch in and out. And so what I'm going to do is try to, get a little rough with this thing and see if I can get a miss here. So let's, oh, there's one right there. And then it closed without me even touching the pedal. So this is huge. This is absolutely huge. All right, so I want to try one more thing. Let's push in. And then what I'm going to do here is just let the clutch pedal snap back, kind of create a big vibration, see what happens. Wow, and it's still open. Oh, that's interesting. All right, let's push in, and all right, there it goes again. So clearly we've got an issue with the clutch switch here, so it's time for a visual inspection, but I'm pretty confident this is going to prove to be the issue. This is why I wanted to validate it with the scan tool first. I hate doing that, but it's got this cover in the way here. All right, let's take a look in here. All right, sorry for the camera work here, but man, I am not exactly in the best of situations here. So this right here is the clutch pedal, and as we track up the clutch pedal bracket here, yeah, we've got a switch right here. This is that other switch I was telling you about. This is not the one we are interested in, but we've got this button right here. And what that is the equivalent of a park neutral safety switch on a automatic transmission. And what that switch does is when you push the pedal in, when you push the clutch pedal in, it's going to push that button. It lets the computer know that the clutch is pushed in all the way. It allows you to start the car. If that button is out like it is now, you cannot start the car. And that, of course, is just a safety to prevent you from starting the car when the clutch is engaged, so you don't drive it through your garage door. And that's all that is. Now, up above it here, this guy, which is not even engaged, right here, this guy right here, which, wow, see, look at that. It's not even, and that is going to be what our problem is. But what that does is you can see the button on the end here that also detects movement of the clutch pedal. And yeah, with it being loose like that, I can see where that would be stuck open. I can't even reach it to get it back into position. But you see there's a little button on the end of it that hits that plate. And if this is loose like that, then certainly, see, like right now, it's not even touching. And you see that other button there, that is lined up okay, so I'm not going to have problems starting the car. But let's get this guy out of here and take a closer look. All right, so what I've got here up in the top corner here is that clutch switch that I've removed. It is still plugged in. And we're going to use the scan tool here to check that the switch is working. Obviously, I think the problem is that it was loose, but it could also be that maybe the switch is bad. We're going to test that. You can also, this is just a simple continuity thing. You could also test these with a continuity meter and check for an open and closed as you push the switch. But let's go ahead and close the switch, and we see it changes. Let it go. And let's do that a few times while yanking on the wires a little bit, make sure that we don't have loose connections here. But it seems like this is working pretty consistently. I am definitely satisfied that loose, it being loose in the bracket is what our problem is. So again, normally this switch is in a closed position like that. That lets the computer know that the clutch is engaged. You push on the clutch pedal, it releases the button. The computer now knows that the clutch is not engaged with the engine. And if it is in this position, open like that, but the vehicle gets over 15 miles an hour, well, the computer then knows you've got a problem. It knows that this switch isn't working right, and it's going to ignore data after that. And even if it didn't ignore data, once you get up to higher speed by second gear, you're not going to really notice the difference as far as that hiccup. So that's what I believe the problem is here. And what I'm going to do to prove that is I'm going to go ahead and just leave this disconnected like that, and I'm going to go drive the car. And what we'll do is I'll hook up the scan tool with those PIDs again, and we're going to see that this car is going to hiccup every time now consistently, and that's going to be conclusive evidence that we've found the problem here. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, folks, I think we have a fix here. As a matter of fact, I'm going to prove it twice, but first of all, I know you can see that from here, but you can see the high spikes in the fuel trim here corresponding with every time I'm starting the car. This car does not like being run with that clutch input switch stuck open like that. It really doesn't like it. As a matter of fact, on the way back, I actually did get a check engine light come on, and the code was a P0704, which is a clutch input circuit problem. So, but the drivability definitely shows here. I'm going to show you another thing too. What I did was I connected the switch again back in and secured it and adjusted it properly, and drove the car. And let me pull that up real quick. Okay, sorry about that. And this is the same scale. Again, we've got the vehicle speed, and we see every time we're stopped, we don't have those big spikes anymore. The fuel trim is much more consistent. Everything is in the same scale here, and the fuel trim never goes above 10, and it was going up to about 25 earlier every time with that switch disconnected. So got ourselves a fix. The proof is in the pudding there, and I am much happier, but the Rice boys are not. So I'm going to go out there and start looking for some victims. Thanks again for watching. I really hope you found this helpful.